Well, anyways, so he called me up one day, and I had the day off of work. I was working at Red Robin at the time, and kind of called me up and was like, "Hey," he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, sitting at home. He said, "Good, come outside. We're gonna go to this gym. They're looking for wrestlers." I was like, "Okay." I just went outside. He was sitting out there. Jumped in the car. We drove 30 minutes away to this place called K2L Grindhouse, which was it was like partnered up next to a church. And it was like a facility with Taekwondo students, and it had a little bit of dabble of mixed martial artists in there. And they had some of the biggest names they do now, today. They had them training at the time, and there were nobodies. And just went in there, and they had a heavyweight guy on the team, and they put me up against him. They told me to go live. All I knew what to do was to wrestle. So anytime you throw a punch, I just double leg him, slam him down. Or we get in grappling exchanges, I'd throw him down. I'd submit him because I didn't know anything. I just knew wrestling moves, and I'd just put him into these alligator style grips, these anaconda grips. And not knowing what jiu-jitsu was at the time, I beat the crap out of their heavyweights. So
not knowing how to throw a kick or a punch, you're just going boom with your wrestling skills.
Not at all. Just went in there with just raw talent, and I ended up doing very, very successfully well. And they pretty much said, "All right, so this is the thing. We want you. Here's a bag. Here's mouth guard. Here's gloves. Here's shin guards. Here's clothing. Here's a bunch of stuff." And it was probably a couple $100 worth of gear. And to me, I was just like, "Oh, okay, like,
sure,
I'll take it."
We'll see you tomorrow.
This is you. Here you go. And so they gave it to me, and they're like, "You're fighting." They literally said, "You're fighting for us." And I didn't tell my dad at all that I was fighting. I didn't tell him. He didn't know that I was fighting until like 2 weeks before my fight.
Oh, wow. So that's all the time you had. You just 2 weeks of training, let's go and fight.
No. I had 3 months of training.
Oh, okay.
Before my fight. I never once told him. And I don't know why, I just felt like I felt at the time what most people would think about fighting. Like when you tell someone like you're a fighter, you do this, it was completely different. Mm-hmm. You know, people would just like kind of judge you based upon, you know, your career path. Like everyone at the time in my family has college degrees. They're going in college. It was all educational. And I'm over here not choosing the fire department, not choosing the railroad. You know, I'm choosing fighting, mixed martial arts. I'm choosing to get punched in the face for a living. Yeah. My grandfather barely could understand it. My grandmother hates it.
She won't watch it.
You know, she won't watch it. But like, it was like I was afraid to tell them. And then we just kind of like, you know, months go by, and I expressed it to, you know, the coach at the time. And he's like, "Hey man, you're about to fight. Like, you need to tell him or else it's going to be bad." So I just showed up one day and I told my dad, I was like, "Hey, here's the thing. I'm fighting now. I got a sponsorship. These guys are putting it on." He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I'm fighting." And then he goes, "Okay." He's like, "When do you fight?" I was like, "I'm fighting in 2 weeks." He goes, "You fight in 2 weeks?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay." That was literally it. It was like, I made it out to something way worse than what it was, or I thought I was going to think less of it. And from that day on, the biggest support I've ever had was my father. Like, he was through and through. My mom as well. Mm-hmm. But they would always encourage me. They always talk to me. They always build me up. And that was one of like the turning points where I was like, okay. Because he did say, you know, my dad's, you know, he see things like it's either A or B. You know what I mean? There's no other letters. There's nothing else. There's just A or B. You either have this or you have this, and that's it. And he was like, if you're doing this, you're 100% in. And if you're not, then we're not doing this. So I was like, all right, I'm going 100% in. So throughout my amateur career, even into like the beginning half of my professional career, my dad would help me out a ton. I actually encouraged him to get into, you know, judging, which he's a judge to this day. Oh. He judges. He used to ref fights. He's a judge now. Still, like him and I do commentary for local fights. It's called FAC. It's inside the Silverstein, or is it Gable Dahmer Arena?
Yeah.
Out in Independence. My dad judges, and right beside my dad is me on the mic commentating. So it's just crazy how it full circle. But anyways, my dad, he would always help me like train. Like we'd wake up. Like I'm terrible at waking up in the morning, especially in my 20s. Like I just didn't. Like I didn't understand. I was a kid. I could work. I could party. I could have fun. I was still making good money. I'd have multiple jobs. Always have an income. I lived at home. So like waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning by myself was probably the hardest thing in the world.
Because I was gonna ask you about that because you have the 3 amateur fights. You had your first one, which you won.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're working. It's not like you're getting a salary from this place. Oh, here are your $10,000 so that you can go and train for the next fight. That's not like that. That's an amateur fight.
No,
you're not getting paid anything.
No, you get paid $1. I would sell tickets, and that's what marketing came in for me. And you know, I worked 4 jobs at one point in time. I was a bartender. I taught tumbling classes. I worked at a restaurant serving. And then I also worked at a gas station. So it was just each and every one. And to me, when you're a fighter, you need difference. Like to me, to my personality, I can't have the same thing consistently. I cannot work an 8 to 5. I'm not that type of person. I hate working in the same environment over and over without a different location. If you go to the same job, you know, there's this thing I always say is misery loves company. It's the biggest thing in the world. But if you go to work and you sit there, you can have the greatest person in the world and you can have great stuff, but you have that one character that always comes in and then they bring everything down. It's just like they want you to talk bad about the work, or they want you to sit there, or they had a bad day and they want to share it with you and they want you to express they want to pull you down, and it would eat you alive. And then what I was doing at that point in time, I couldn't deal with negativity. I couldn't deal with too much of that. And every job has one person or multiple people, especially in the line of work of serving or bartending or any of that. There's always somebody that's not happy. Like, oh, I made, $200 and last night we made $400. Like, dude, you just made $600 in 2 days, but you want more money. It's just like, that's the type of deal. It's like nothing was ever enough. And that's what I mean. It was like I had to always have different flavors. So I'd go to this job and I know that they're going to bring me down, but I know if I go to this job will build me up. But if I'm there too long, there's going to be that one person that kind of pulls you down. So I would just always switch it up and be able to train in the meantime. And all my jobs were able to work around training schedules. So I was able to get 2 or 3 training in the morning, then I'd work at night. And then the next day I would work in the morning and then I'll get 2 or 3 at night. So I'd create a schedule. I'd probably work 40 to 60 hours a week and then train an additional, I would say 35 to 40 hours as well.
Wow. That's amazing.
I lived in the gym.
You know, growing up, we always go and eat at this restaurant, that restaurant, and here, McDonald's and all that.
Yeah.
Was that something you have to learn to eat differently, eat healthy, do you have like a strict diet?
It was, I didn't start going down to 185 pounds until like the Contender Series, until I started making money. Okay. So I would take fights at weight classes that wasn't difficult, and as a fighter, I walk around 215. I had to fight 205, 206 because they give you a pound on the scale for variance of the scale. So I'd fight 206. I'd be 215, maybe not even 215, 213 at times. So I just have to cut the weight so I could eat whatever I wanted. Didn't have to worry about what I was eating, and it didn't really affect me until I started going down into a different weight class. But at that time, we made sure that if we're putting sacrifice on our body to cut down in weight, we're being compensated to help provide for that lifestyle. I spend on my nutrition, put it like this, on my fight week last week, last week on my fight week, I have to have nutrition. I have to eat certain things throughout the weight to remove the weight on me, but still be healthy. I spent $177 on food just for 1 week, actually just for 4 days.
4 days.
So 4 days worth of food was $177. If you're fighting for free as an amateur, you don't need to be spending that.
So you win those 3 amateur fights and then you made a decision, I'm going pro. What got into your mind to say, I'm going pro?
So if you actually look on the internet, for some reason, a lot of the fights that I did were not sanctioned. So I had I had 12 fights as an amateur.
Oh, there we go.
I fought all over. In 2010 to 2015, I had 12 fights. I busted out 3 fights, and it was very difficult. After my first 3 fights, I ended up losing my 4th fight. I took a fight short notice. I didn't underestimate. I just didn't respect the game, and I didn't respect the opponent, so I didn't train like I should have. I lost that fight. And that was the fight that allowed my dad to be like, that was the dumbest call by the ref. I'm going to start reffing. That's what brought him into it. And then the next fight I called out the guy, the #1 kid in Kansas City. He was undefeated. He knocked out majority of his people. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to take him on. So they put it out there. And during, my amateur rankings, everybody wanted me on their show in Kansas City because I had such a great following. My personality was awesome. And I would just bring in ticket sales. So I would sell upwards of $5,000 worth of tickets, which they would compensate us per ticket. And they wanted that. So he was like, okay, you call the shots. So
you were fighting 205, 215. However, right now you're a middleweight fighter, which is 185.
Correct.
185, and you walk at about
210.
210.
Yeah.
210. So even though you might not be fighting, there's a possibility that the UFC might say, hey, can you fight in 2 weeks?
No. There's always a possibility, but this is the thing, is that I'm in control.
There we go.
I'm in control. Like, I took that fight in, under 2 months. I took that fight in 3 weeks, done in 3 weeks. A teammate of mine was injured. He was having the fight. They were like, you should take this fight. We want you to take this fight. I said, okay. So they told me I'm taking the fight. They got the fight acceptance. We got it. We're fighting. That was that. But in all honesty, they in the contract, they have to offer me a fight every 3 months. There's so many people on the roster. I've already had 2 fights within 4 months of the year. So they're not going to sit there and rush it. I've also had 4 fights on contract in the past 6 months, and it never, I had to let my body heal. So they're respecting the fact that I did stuff them for a favor, and that's how they work. I've done great things for them. So it's not like I don't have to take a fight. If they offer me a fight, I'm like, I can say no, but then I'll go back to the bottom list and they'll make me wait an additional 3 months. So it could be 6 months because I refuse to fight. Now,
this is the last fight with Sam
Alvey.
Which is not this guy has his record. He's a vet.
Yeah.
And people, 50 fights, at least in record that we know of, professional fights. There was a time, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a moment there where he throws a combo.
Yeah.
Were you hurt at all at any given time with him?
Yeah. That hurt. It hit me in the high so hard, I thought I broke my foot. I'm not joking. Like,
wow.
Something happened, and you could see it in the back. I thought I was like slamming my foot down because previously I've broken toes in practice before. And instead of stopping, I would stop my foot down and my toes would just snap back into place. So I was like, I thought my ankle was popped out. So I was trying to stop my foot and, it looks like I'm wobbled in there, but it hurt. My leg started hurting when he landed in here. My eye was open, so I saw the punch. He's a heavy puncher, and it definitely, I felt it. I felt it, but like it wasn't in a sense that I was like, I was seeing stars and I'm about to go down. I was like, no, I saw it. I felt my foot was injured, and I watched him come over and he throws a kick to the same foot that hurts. It landed hard and it hurt even worse. But then he tried to throw a punch and I turned my shoulder. I veered down. I rolled underneath him. And when I came back up, I threw a hook right at the end of the conversation. And the bell rings. And then I walk over to my stool, sit down in the stool. And I was sitting there like, okay, I think my foot's broken. I want to tell James. The commission's right there. I don't want to tell him because I don't want them to stop. So I'm listening to James and I look down at my foot to make sure, like, what? In my head, I'm thinking, like, is it broken? And then I was like, oh, we're good. It just hurts. So we're okay. And then I stood up the next round and it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Cervantes.
I was going to say, when we watched the fight, when you won your contract with UFC, I think it was Bellator, when you kicked.
No, it's Dana White Contender Series at the time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes,
Series.
yes. How did that feel at the time when kicked him on his face and he goes down? And we saw you, because that's one thing that we've noticed about you. You have so much respect for the other fighters that you always kneel down and then to make sure that they're okay and then show out respect. How did that feel though when you win the fight?
Man, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I told my dad this, and he was like, "Hey, because he was just." My dad was kind of upset on the way I approached the Sam Alvey fight, and it was like they asked me a question, and I openly said like, "I'm gonna f him up," and it was just me being honest and me being real. Like, this is my time. This is who I am. This person is trying to steal my paychecks. This person trying to do this. So I was a little bit more vocal, but I said that. They wanted me to elaborate. I said no. So like that, it speaks for itself. And I didn't do interviews, things like that. But in that fight, he brought it up. He's like, you kneeled down after you knocked out Phil Haas. I didn't kneel down out of respect. I didn't kneel down out of respect. I kneeled down because I thought I was disqualified. I thought he was still on the ground. I've never had a referee come in and shove me the way Herb Dean did. He shoved me, and I like went back, and I was like, and I saw him there down, and I was like, oh man. And I kind of sat down, and I was just like, I just lost this. I just kicked the guy when he was down. Like, I looked away as I threw the kick, and like, and I felt for him at that present time. Like, after my fights, when I'm in the mode, but moments after, it takes a while for my body to go back to the normal person that you're talking to at this present time and moment. Like, there's something that takes over me, and it's just the animal instinct inside, the heritage, the Cuban side of me that comes out. And I'm
primitive, that manly side, that cave-like man that you are.
It is. Look, I'm very kind. I like everybody. I love everybody. But when I'm in there and I'm in the octagon, I turn into something else. And in that moment, I saw that, and I saw him on the ground, and I got on my knees, and I just kind of sat there, and I was like, dang, dude. And everybody was cheering off to the side. I remember Coach yelling at me, and I told him stop, because I didn't recognize that I won. I sat there, and I was just like, I was dog tired. I just got disqualified. I lost. I'm like, damn it. And then he's not getting up, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, as like moments start going by, the puzzles are starting going in my head. And then I look over and I see like Dana like walking by, like just sitting there. He walks over to Joe Silva, and I see that, and he's like sitting there talking to him. And I see Herb Dean. Herb Dean never once came over to me, and they're all checking on him. And then I see everyone jumping up and cheering, and then it starts connecting like, oh, I won.
Yeah.
I won. And you see my posture go from like a squat to like, oh, and I dropped down to my knees, and I was just like, oh, snap. Like, I won. I won. Wow. And I knocked him out. I didn't realize that at the point in time.
Now, you suffer this crazy injury, and you did not fight for 31 months. The combination of the injury and then the COVID comes along. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Man, there's nowhere to start. There's so many ups and down roller coasters. It's not an easy thing to like express. Like, I can sit here and just go down this rabbit hole of all these different things that happened during the time to get me to where I'm at today. And I had an injury that was so rare that there's a surgeon that we ended up finding that has never seen anything of the severity that had this type of injury. Like, he's done this surgery on multiple MLB pitchers. So what it was is a latissimus dorsi tendon rips off, completely severed. So the function of lifting, pulling, pushing was ripped off. So I had nothing holding my body but just extra muscles around to allow me to move it around. It rips off in my fight, and my arm just kind of goes dead. Like literally just like, I just couldn't move it. I have photos in the fight of me grabbing a hold of my opponent. I have to grab him like this, grabbing my own wrist and using my arm to pull, because grabbing this, I could not pull. There was no strength in there. There was a point I had his back and I went for an arm bar and I was trying to pull my arm, but for some reason it would not pull to strengthen his arm out, because I had I severed the tendon directly off. So when I went to the surgeon's like, I've never seen this before. MLP pitchers have this whenever they throw it, and it's due to extending their arm. And when they extend their arm, the tendons here in the tendon slightly rips, where mine just completely blew out. And then during that time, they told me they wanted to do a surgery with a guy in California, and this person has never worked on an athlete their entire life. The only athlete they've ever worked on this type of surgery is one time, and it was a guy that I don't know what those are called, where they're on the surfboard and they have the parachute.
Yeah, it's like a windsurfer.
Yeah, windsurfer. So he was like a windsurfer, and that's what they considered an athlete, but it wasn't the same type of surgery. So I was just like, I don't feel comfortable with it. So when we were looking for it during that time, it was supposed to be an emergency surgery, and I waited an entire month to get it, because I needed to find the right person. And I found the right person. They went in the surgery. They had to shave off some of the tissue, because it did curl up, and it did what it did. And, long story short, the surgery was effective. It did well. My body heals super fast. I overhealed myself and caused frozen shoulder, which it wouldn't allow me to move my arm.
Man.
And for literally 19 months, my arm wouldn't lift past here.